Pilot Say What?
What?
Exactly. Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. Today I'm here with James and Macy. We're sitting in the main showroom hangar. It's a little bit different than what we normally do, but we wanted to have a conversation about some things that are centered around feeling when you fly. We want to use more indicators than just our instruments. And that's why these guys are here. They're going to be the best to be able to give you that insight. I'm here just to kind of add in and give a little direction on the conversation so we can get somewhere with a little bit of meaning for whoever's watching. So for CFIs and students, I really hope you get a lot out of this. So I'll let James do the intro for y'all, and maybe you'll tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today.
Sure, sounds good. Hey, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me back. I'm James Helpaska, one of the Assistant Chief Flight Instructors at Thrust Flight in Addison, Texas. And this is my counterpart, Macy Arrington, one of the other Assistant Chiefs. So thanks for having us back.
Absolutely, yes. I think we're just going to jump right into it, right? We have topics that include things like operating versus riding, the max braking, and then visual maneuvers versus maybe being inside the cockpit, right? So there's different ways to maneuver. I know you guys can talk about that all day, so I'll let you do it. But let's start off with operating versus riding. I think one of the first things we really want to kind of talk a little bit more about is the seat height and the position of the seat. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's going to impact maybe the student or whoever's flying the plane?
Yeah, sure. And so when we talk about, we've been talking about this at length the last couple of weeks, the difference between operating and riding an airplane, right? Just this whole getting back to a sense of feeling. Lots of the big box schools spend a lot of time helping you pass a check ride, but never really teaching you how to fly. And so we've really been trying to come back around and focus on making pilots, not check ride passing people, you know. So when it comes to seat height, I mean, this is the very first time somebody gets in an airplane. It's not like sitting in a chair, right? There's a lot of things you can adjust. You can adjust the up, down, front, back, how far it leans forward or backwards. There's a lot of stuff to consider. And so trying to figure out what works best for each student is hard. And as a new flight instructor, that's something you really have to think about. I'm a little bit taller than Macy by just a little bit. And so I sit a little bit lower, but maybe she sits a little bit higher.
That makes sense?
Yeah, we actually did a video on this in the hangar, and talked a little bit about, Chris Burrows did a video and how his video was so much different than my video, just based off of where I can see.
Exactly, and I remember I was learning about sight picture that day.
Yeah.
And I'm not a pilot again, but I got to learn a lot that day from helping you film that video. That video is actually doing pretty well on YouTube right now. So it seems, I didn't know that was such a big deal to like take into consideration. But even the numbers are showing me that is true once I look at how the video is performing. So your iPad locked, do you mind?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so not only is it a big deal being able to do this for the first time, but it's trying to teach somebody how to get to that same position every time, because we want that to be consistent. Landing an airplane's hard, but it's something that we can do consistently if we have the aiming point, right? We always talk about the aiming point. Yeah. That aiming point is going to look different if you're sitting in a different position in the aircraft. So trying to teach them, hey, this is how you set it up. This is how you set it up every time.
Yes. Gotcha. Is there any particular tips that go into that when you first get, like, let's say you're about to hop in the plane, about to go on a flight, it's you and one other person. I mean, is there anything that you would say right away, what's the first thing you do?
Yeah, so I always tell my students, new private students, when you get in, you want to position the vertical height so that you can see just a sliver of the top of the engine cowling, so like just a little bit of the red. And then you want to position it forward so that you can completely depress the brakes, but you're not too far forward to where you're almost like hunched in, you know what I mean? Like your knees are in your chest, and you have full deflection of all control surfaces. So those are probably the biggest things that I tell them when they first get in the plane. And then we'll talk about the rest as we are taxiing down or taking off or in straight and level flight.
Absolutely. Okay, good.
That's great. And it's a lot easier in most aircraft to adjust the seat down than it is up once you're already in the airplane. So I tell them, hey, lift everything up, lift it all the way back, and because it's easier. So for me, it's 2 clicks down. That's from the very top spot is perfect for me. But in a Cessna, I roll it all the way up, and then I roll it down 2 clicks. But it's a lot easier to do it from an all the way up position to the low position.
I actually like the fact that you're, I want to make a point out of that the fact that you're able to actually recall exactly where it is verbally without being in a plane, not just by feeling it, right? You know, not just, you don't just feel, you know. So I think that's really cool.
And part of that comes from experience.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. But maybe that's a good goal to have, you know, to be able to say, hey, where do you sit?
Yeah,
You know, how many clicks down, right?
all the way up, all the way forward.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there you go. Well, then,
It's easy for me.
I do see that. Is it true? Does shoe selection like kind of impact how you feel when you're flying the plane?
It does, yeah,
So look
for
at
sure.
Macy's shoe compared to my shoe. You look at the
Yeah,
bottom
look
part
at
and then
the
you look
heel.
at it from the side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you notice how hers from the side looks a lot different than mine.
Yep.
I've got no heel whatsoever, while she has probably an inch and a half heel.
Yeah.
And so it
Depending
makes
on how it
it makes
feels.
a big difference the way your foot sits on the floor.
Yeah.
And so in this sense of being able to feel the aircraft, right? We're going back to that feeling the airplane, flying by feel. I feel very connected because I can feel everything in my heels because my heels are touching the bottom of the airplane. Or, you know, essentially every part of my foot is touching the rudders. So
Yeah.
you feel a lot more, and it makes you a lot more sensitive when you can use the brakes, how to touch the rudders, all sorts of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, okay. And that's not something I'm not gonna notice any of that kind of stuff, but I think when I was doing one of the other videos is when I was told that you actually have to use both feet the way that you do, and I wouldn't have gone as far to think that the shoes matter. Do students, I mean, do you have that conversation with students?
You have to, right?
Yeah.
We live in Texas. Everybody owns a pair of cowboy boots. I own a couple. Those have a heck of a heel on them, right?
Yeah.
And so not only does it lift your foot higher off the floor, it changes how your legs, you know, maybe you have to sit a little bit more as, you know, rather being connected to the airplane. They can get stuck under the rudders. I mean, if you have enough of a heel, there's nobody flying in high heels that I know of, but like
Gotcha.
that can actually be a safety issue.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
Well,
people
cool.
with bigger feet too.
Yeah.
I have tiny feet, so the heel doesn't affect me as much. But people with bigger feet, they'll get on the brakes and they don't really realize that they're on the brakes.
Oh,
as well.
okay.
So because they can't really feel.
So that's something you have to kind of, would you say that most people need to be informed in that way? They're not going to think about that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's my point. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm glad that we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's a few things that go into what you have to maybe wear or count as tools in the cockpit, right? So I see we also talk about headset and sunglasses and hats, right? If we're talking about shoes, then those are other wearable things that may impact how you're able to fly. Can you talk a little bit about maybe just the headset before you go into sunglasses and hat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So headsets, we start everybody out, part of the program, you get a pair of David Clark headsets, which don't have any noise canceling. That's kind of not the bottom of the line, but the entry level headset. And then you'll see most of the flight instructors have moved on to Bose or the other one, Delta Lightspeed, Delta
Lightspeed,
Zulus,
yeah.
And so those start to involve noise canceling. And so rather than this very loud humming sound all the time of an airplane, right? Airplanes are loud.
Yeah.
Wind flying past your face is loud. It actually cancels all that noise, makes it a lot quieter. So you can hear, you can think a little bit better. Like, I think that's a very undervalued portion of that.
Yeah. And as someone, I have David Clark. So like, and David Clark has different, different levels of headsets you can buy. So I do have the noise canceling version of those, and they're still not near as good as like the Bose you can buy. And then when you put sunglasses under them, it breaks the seal.
Yes.
And so then it makes, I can't even wear sunglasses with mine because it makes it so loud in the
Yeah.
plane. So
And so
you can't hear ATC.
I don't have my flying pair of sunglasses. I actually have several different pairs of sunglasses. You can kind of see how thick these are. The same thing, it busts the seal. But these are not the pair of sunglasses I fly with. One, because they're polarized, so if I turn my head, I can't see the screen. It blacks out the screen. So I have a pair of non-polarized, very flexible, very, very thin sunglasses that don't break the seal of my headset. And I can wear them anytime, turn my head, any attitude, see everything. But it's kind of with that, along that line of feeling the airplane.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want a student out there trying to fly like this, you know, trying to land into the sun. You know, you want them to be comfortable, relaxed. So the noise canceling, it's relaxing. A nice pair of sunglasses, they're not squinting, they're relaxed. So it's all about, you know, kind of molding yourself into the airplane with these different relaxation sort of things.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I could imagine just not knowing those sorts of things, and then someone thinking you know, and then not telling you, right? So it sounds like this is a good checklist to be going through with every new student, and then maybe not every new student, maybe someone later on in the program. But I didn't know polarized sunglasses I didn't know there was a difference. I had no idea. So, but that being said, I wear. Sounds crazy. I thought it was fake, and I looked it up one day because my eyes were burning. Blue light glasses, because I have to look at a screen late at night sometimes when I'm editing, and my eyes they've literally started just burning, and I'm like, what is going on with my eyes? Am I just tired? And I started wearing blue light glasses, but I also wear noise cancellation headphones, and it messes it up. That being said, does a hat play into that at all?
Yeah, I would say it does. I've had a lot of, I've had a few new students who wear both. So they wear a hat and sunglasses. And as a new student, you have no clue what you're listening for with ATC. I can wear my sunglasses with my David Clarks and not hear great, but know exactly what ATC is saying because I've been doing it for a year and a half, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But for them, they think, gosh, I'm not understanding them. So you have to tell them, hey, take that hat off, take those sunglasses off, so
Yeah.
that they can actually understand and hear what's going on to get a clear description.
And I feel like making things out of radio chatter, if you're not someone who like did a lot of that ahead of time or try to get used to that, I know how I am. I'm like, what'd you say? Even when I'm just talking like this, oftentimes I have to really pay attention. And even if I am, I'm like, I really can't make out what people say sometimes. So giving yourself the best situation sounds like setting yourself up for success here anyways. It seems like the best thing you can do.
So when we talk about shoe size, getting comfortable in the plane, all this other stuff, I mean, it rolls right into a bunch of errors that we see all the time, like how just as simple as how we use the brakes in the airplane, because we have anti-lock brakes, or excuse me, we do not have anti-lock brakes, right? And so it's not like anything else, for the most part, anybody's ever been in where they can slam the brakes as far as they want. You know, they're not really going to go skidding. I mean, you touch the brakes a little bit too hard, all of a sudden that plane will it'll start slipping and sliding, and if it's wet or if you got a little bit of a turn in there, it can turn into a real bad situation real fast. And so the reason we talk about shoes and stuff like that is because we want these students to be able to feel what they're doing. And so rather than, short fields, right, they teach us maximum braking because you're stopping on a very short runway. Yeah. And the students do go, huh! And they push as much brake as they can all the time, and they got some flaps in, they're going a little too fast, and the plane starts jerking around like that, rather than, okay, I'm sliding my feet up to the top of the rudders. I'm pressing, I can feel a little bit of brake pressure. Now I can really start to apply more smooth braking rather than that jerky movement.
Is that the difference? Is the fact that they just kind of go for it all at once because you're teaching, like you said, max braking, but really that means still so what's the point? Like, you want to get to max braking, but you want to do it gradually, right?
Exactly.
And some people hear max braking, they think all at once.
And as much brake as you can grab at once.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, think about how you brake in your car, right?
Yeah,
I
right?
mean, you're flying down the highway and then somebody in front of you slams on their brakes, you slam on your brakes. Like, it's what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they get in a plane and they think, brakes, slam on these brakes,
Yeah. It makes it.
They don't work the same.
It's not the same. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. Well, then when you say let roll, that's what you mean by let roll?
Yeah.
Right? Gotcha. Because also it's about trying to get off too early, right? What's that about?
Sure. So they all kind of go hand in hand, right? We see it real often where real long runways especially, okay, there's going to be a bunch of different runway exits. And okay, well, hey, maybe here's one coming up and the student really wants to get off the runway, right? Rather than, hey, if you roll an extra 1,000 feet, you can still get off the runway without slamming the brakes. The chief pilot and I went out flying yesterday just to try out some new procedures, and we just wanted to see how fast will the plane stop if we don't touch the brakes at all. Well, a nice short field approach, didn't touch the brakes, it rolled for maybe 1,000 feet, and so I touched down on the front of the runway, only took 1,000, maybe 1,500 feet, so I could have landed on a 2,000-foot runway and never touched the brakes.
And okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't overutilize them, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, then what about when the tower wants you to expedite? What does that mean?
Okay, so expedite, that just means that they need you to get to that point or through that point as quick as you can. So a lot of times when we're taxiing Alpha 216 down here, we'll have traffic getting off on Foxtrot, and Foxtrot cuts off Alpha. So we'll need to get through Foxtrot as quick as we can. So tower will say, expedite through Foxtrot. So a lot of times students will just throw in a lot of power, and then as soon as we get through Foxtrot, they'll slam on the brakes and take the power out. So that's the idea of expedite.
Yeah. Same thing on the runway, right?
Yeah.
Where if you land and they've got, we do 60% of the traffic here at Addison, right? And so usually it's a thrust plane with another thrust plane behind it, with another thrust plane behind
Exactly.
that, and then a jet
With
somewhere
a
down.
Gulfstream, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
With the
you
Gulfstream.
guys, that's when it's applying, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so they'll tell us to expedite. It used to happen a lot more. It happens a lot less now. But it's okay. Land, expedite. And so same thing. We want to be power idle, rolling out, smoothly playing the brakes. But the student hears that same thing. Airspeed comes back alive. You can start feeling the plane trying to take off again, and then they pull that power out too late, slam on the brakes, get off the taxiway. But when they say expedite like that, okay, just like she said, you just need to get to that point as quickly as you can. I forget exactly the phrase you said.
Yeah,
but
as
do it
quickly as you
safely.
safely can.
Yeah,
safely.
exactly.
That doesn't mean you have to break your neck trying to get off the runway. No, that's as quickly as we can.
Yeah,
If it
follow
com-
procedure at the end of the day. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it comes down to it, that other guy can go around.
Yep.
Are they going to be happy about it? No.
No.
Right.
But did we potentially lose directional control of an airplane? Have we popped a tire because we broke too fast? Did we ruin a tire? Have we smoked some brakes? Like, flying planes is expensive. And every time we slam on the brakes like that, it costs money.
It costs money.
does,
So
yeah.
it could sound like, and just I like to wrap it up this way maybe, but it could sound like they're telling you to hurry.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
instead, maybe you should hear, hey, there's a sense of urgency right now. And now act within a sense of urgency. But hurrying is probably not a good idea, right? Hurrying is not safe. No one wants to rush anything. But do have a sense of
Yeah.
urgency. Get out
Have
of there.
a sense of urgency, and then don't be afraid to say unable. I do it all the time. They'll tell me to get off on golf, unable.
Unable.
Okay,
yeah.
get off
At
the
least,
next taxi.
but you know, and that goes back to, we had an episode with the ATC guys, right? Maybe not any at this airport, but the idea is that unable sounds like a good response. If you're not gonna have a certain sense of urgency that you think meets their standards, that what they're expecting of you, maybe saying unable is a good sense of communication, so they know that, hey, this is actually gonna take me a second, maybe a little longer than you think. Does that sound reasonable to do sometimes?
Yeah, kind of. And it's a conversation to be had. Hey, I can't do what you're asking me to do for whatever reason. Like, we need to come up with a new plan.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. I wanted to know that they seem to appreciate that. Again, maybe not. If they're gonna want you to hurry, then they're gonna want you to hurry regardless. So communication is key though, right? I think maybe it was in the conversation with you. I remember talking about kind of like what you see. Actually, I remember when I learned about instrument training, right? So the difference is, you learn the skill of being able to operate the plane from within the plane instead of just relying on what you see outside of the plane. I see here that the way we wrote it down was visual maneuvers versus being inside the cockpit. Is there something, can you talk to me a little bit more about that and what the difference is?
Essentially, everything we do, whether it be private pilot, commercial pilot, except for obviously instrument, we want you to be inside the cockpit almost 100% of the time. But all these maneuvers are designed to be flown with your eyes outside the cockpit. The instruments are secondary. Okay, yeah, there's standards. I need to be within a certain airspeed or within a certain altitude, but okay, we can glance at those and know that we're doing the right thing.
Right, like a tool.
Yeah, exactly. But for Lazy 8, Shondells, slow flight, everything, we're picking a visual reference point or several visual reference points outside. And then if you just look at that and then feel what the plane's doing, you can do it. Like Lazy 8s, people try to go pitch, pitch, bank, pitch, pitch, bank. They fly the plane through the whole thing, right? Or they control the plane through the whole thing, rather than if I stick my eyes outside at my 45-degree point, I just kind of pitch up. Hey, the plane's gonna go there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, okay, I switched to my 90-degree point. The plane's gonna go there. Just like if you're in a car, you hear about it all the time where, okay, why'd you crash into the wall? Well, I was looking at the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw it coming, and they just end up going there. Like lots of
It's like keeping your eye on the ball. It's a classic. I do the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I used to race dirt bikes. Exact same concept.
Yeah.
When you go into a turn, your eyes go exactly where you want to go, and
Yeah.
you follow that. And if you don't, you're gonna crash, or something's gonna happen, right? So I think applying that concept to not just the maneuvers, but all phases of flight is such a huge deal when you're starting out in the very beginning. The first thing I teach my private students when we go up, we take off and we turn, and I'm like, I don't care what any of this says right here. I want you to look outside and develop your sight picture for what straight and level flight looks like. You can verify with what you see and hear, right? Make sure I'm not climbing, I'm not descending, but your eyes are outside. And that makes such a huge difference, not just going through their private training, but after they get fixated on that thing and instrument, right? They get to commercial, that's when we really see, are they an outside pilot or are they an inside pilot?
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
And
I like
so-
that you have terminology for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
'Cause-
it's huge because they can associate, okay, if I put the attitude indicator here, I'm going to descend, or my airspeed's going to do this, but maybe they're not really associating like what their body feels at the same time. But if I'm looking outside, okay, like landing, right? How many times has a student sunk, through the glide slope and they're dragging it in? Okay, well, you can feel that sink. If I'm looking at my landing point, my intended point of touchdown, I can feel, hey, that's moving up on my window, and then you'll start to feel it like in the seat of your pants, in your feet, all sorts of stuff like that. But they'll never develop that if they're just setting an attitude indicator, setting a power setting. Like, yeah, the plane's gonna do it, but
And I'm liking this conversation because I can relate to this in my own ways, right? But I talked to one of the CFIs recently on one of the podcasts, and we got into a conversation where it was almost like artistic flying versus just by the book. And it's kind of like you said, inside pilot versus outside pilot. It seems like a recurring, topic and thought process, especially from CFIs. CFIs are able to recognize that students are thinking so much about what they've learned and not enough about what they're doing in the moment, or maybe how they feel sometimes. That sounds like it's happening. I'm curious, what are some of the, and I guess that's what you wrote next, so I'm glad I'm following. What are some of the key physical indicators that that you can kind of look out for, whether it be like, the gravity or whatever it might be? It says right here, use your butt to feel.
Yeah, that's my favorite
right?
one. So
yeah.
Specifically, so like eights on pylons. That's a maneuver we do where you change the altitude to keep a point on your wing. That's a very vague understanding of it, right? So one thing that pilots will do with that is they will push on their rudder pedals to keep that point on their wing, which you can't do. That's against the rules, right?
Yeah.
And I can always feel, I'll be staring at the point and I can tell when they're pushing on that right rudder, because if they're pushing on that right rudder, I can feel it on my left butt cheek, because like I can almost feel myself pushing, right? And so that's flying with feel. And you can do that in all phases of flight, like he talked about, like coming into land, like I know when a student's sinking and I'm like, need to bump that power a little bit. We're sinking. They never do it. We're sinking. And we sit in the plane for 8 hours a day sometimes, and like I get, we know what that feels like at this point, but teaching them how to recognize what that feels like is so important.
Yeah. I can imagine that you can feel lots of different things, and making sense of what you feel is probably what's really important to help yourself become more of an outside pilot, especially after instrument, like you're talking about. Yeah. So, is there anything else that you usually can notice? Because I know we're talking about, what are some tips to be more of an outside pilot? Like, so right now we've got, I think that's what a lot of this is, right? Having good sight picture, right? And then using your butt to feel, and then using your eyes to kind of guide you. That's kind of some of the reoccurring things I'm thinking of that helps us flying with feel. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you would think of there? I mean, maybe it's nuanced, I don't know.
Yeah, it comes from like how we teach our CFIs. Okay. When the new CFIs get in the plane, they're gonna say, okay, you're gonna use this point on the cowling, and then it's gonna be 4 fingers, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, whatever it is. And I kind of purposely mess my seat up, or slouch in the plane or do something like that, and then I'll do the maneuver or say like, oh, why isn't it working? Okay, well, because you picked a point that works for you. Like, we have to remember that everybody's different, everybody's an individual, especially when it comes to sitting in a plane. And so developing that ability to really like teach and develop a sense for how other people are doing it. I was thinking in my head just now, the people that make shoes, I forget, the bespoke shoes, right? Like they cut it up and design it for your foot. Well, every time we put a student in an airplane, we, the flight instructor, are having to teach them and help them fit the plane to themselves. Because we can only do so much to change it, right?
Right, and then the rest you feel, gotcha.
Yeah. But if we're never set up properly, then we'll never develop a feel, or I guess the real feel, for how the plane is supposed to be moving through space around you.
Yeah, I really like the way that you're putting that into words. On that note, is there anything anyone can do to get more of that sense of feel? Maybe whether it be flying more, whether it be using the simulator. I don't know if that helps or not really, but what can someone do if, say, they don't feel like they have a good sense of feel? What can they do to help get better at that, other than maybe it's just experience? I mean, I don't know.
It's exactly what Macy said. It's becoming an eyes outside the cockpit pilot. It takes effort sometimes, and when I switch from like an instrument student or double eyes, I have to drag myself out of the cockpit sometimes. Okay. Sometimes it's a purposeful, you have to actually drag yourself outside of the cockpit. So maybe it's a late stage student, you turn off the PFD, turn off the MFD. We've got a standby instrument where it's just your airspeed, heading, and altimeter. Okay, turn off everything else, right? Oh, but I can't see traffic.
Eyeballs.
Yeah, you can.
You can.
Yeah.
Eyeballs.
Trust it, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so occasionally you'll get someone that's struggled for quite a while, and the chiefs will go fly with them. This one guy that I can think of was really struggling with steep turns. Steep turns, slow flight, power off stalls, and he started feeling motion sick all the time. Every time he flew, he would feel motion sick. Yeah. And he said, okay, turned off the screens. He flew the best steep turn I've ever seen in my life, 0-0 on any airspeed, altitude, everything. It was perfect.
It's because people tend to think they're trusting the instruments more than themselves,
exactly.
Right, at that point.
And it's
important, you need to get to that point where you trust yourself sooner than later.
Yeah.
That's really what the key goal should be there, really.
Because instruments, the majority of the instruments lag, right? They're trends. So it says, okay, this is what I was doing for the last 6 seconds. This is what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 seconds. And so if somebody can see that and is adept at interpreting what that's saying, hey, that's not agreeing with what my body's feeling right now. There's the motion sickness. But the moment he gets his eyes outside and sees, okay, I can feel this, I can see exactly what's happening because this is real time, no motion sickness.
Right, because your body and your mind are on the same accord because you're paying attention.
Yeah, but he had to make that purposeful decision to drag his eyes outside the cockpit.
I think that people should be able to get a lot out of this, both the CFIs and the students, because through this conversation, I think we went a little deeper on each topic. And even as a CFI, if you're having to teach someone, you kind of have to be able to go to that deeper place and see where the behavior starts in order to be able to correct it in a student. And I think there's a lot of good points in here, even just you saying things about, like, hey, get in there and see how it feels in just to position your seat well. Have a good starting point. A lot of times people won't know that's a good starting point to teach someone either.
Yeah.
So whoever's watching this video, I hope that they get a lot out of what we just talked about. So
Sure.
Yeah.